What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and this is another episode of the Facts Project. Today, very, very special guest. Third time on the program, our main man, Jeffrey L. Johnson, here to talk about Ennead in its truest form. Looking out for Volume 1 right here next to me. Thank you for being here again, brother.
Appreciate you for having me as always. Looking
Yeah,
forward to getting into it.
absolutely. So the way that we're looking at this now, I mean, I've been, of course, a follower of yours since the very beginning. And within the 6 singular issues, even I remember the sampler that you basically sent out, and now I have this good old Volume 1 right here next to me. Where are we at in the kingdom of Althea?
So yeah, that sampler, man, I forgot about that. I definitely didn't print 100 of those, so hold on to that just in case.
Oh yeah, that's my
Um, might be worth something one day.
word.
So we are in terms of the comic and what the world has seen. Volume one, I snuck in issue 7 there to kind of complete that volume. I made the decision last year to go back and color 1 through 7, so folks have that experience. For folks like yourself who've been with me from the beginning, you're used to it in black and white. So I think coming in with full color, I was skeptical of how much of a difference it would make, and to me, it blew me away. It totally changed the feel of the world for the better. So that's one leg. You can think about this with a few pillars. The other pillar that I'm building up will eventually roll into what I'm imagining as a novel trilogy series, which some of I am teasing over on Substack. What I'm doing there, I wanted to slowly introduce readers of Ennead to prose writing. I also wanted to get into a rhythm of uh, prose writing myself. All this
Mhm.
is still fairly new to me in terms of making it public, right? I think we all have our private creative endeavors, but being out in the world and actually, held up to a certain standard. I work with an editor and we've worked together on comics. I wanted to get our workflow going for prose. So what I did was I went backwards and kind of filled in all the gaps in between the comic chapters. So I think there might be 5 viewpoints. I don't even know at this point. There's a lot of viewpoints in Ennead, but pretty much after every viewpoint change, I went in and filled in a gap with a little vignette of what was going on. So the
Mhm.
first one I wrote was titled "Man of the Sword," and that followed King Julius after he had just run down a group of rebels, from his perspective at least, a group of rebels who were terrorizing the town of Thetan. We kind of see him finish the job and really drive the point home that he was trying to make in the first opening scene of Ennead. And what I eventually turned that into was the 3 main characters for my novel. I actually discovered them through this process. I knew I wanted to write a novel. I didn't know what I wanted the viewpoint to be, but as I went in and started filling those gaps, these characters, the one that I've introduced to the world, so I'll name him is Jaleel, Jaleel, depending on when eventually when the story gets written, his story is completed because it is being written. I'll figure out how I want to really pronounce that, but I call him Jaleel in my head. But he will be one of 3 main characters, and I discovered him through this process of filling in the gaps. And then the last leg, talking about where we stand now, I'm now going back to my notes and I am filling in those gaps as well. So as you know, Annie had started really as a world building project.
It did.
Many moons ago, I was designing a world called called Design 2. And
Mhm.
Design 2 was just a place that I was filling in all these different countries of origin and cultures and stories. And so basically I went back to that and I just started telling the actual story of Amashik post separation, post shattering, which is the cataclysm that kind of brings the world into the situation that it's in now. And I'm telling the story post separation to really where we are today. And so when you talk about where Ennead has gone, where it's been, what it's been through over the last 2 years, it's
Mhm.
really just it's gotten a broader base is a simpler way to put it.
Yeah, because what the if we wanted to track back to the beginning, the breakup of basically when we're talking about the rule of 9, the 9 families that basically were in hindsight based around this entire kingdom, the kingdom of Althea, and then pretty much what brought them to that point to where they're so far separated and in odds with each other, that what exactly is going to be the pivotal plot point that's going to bring them together. But a nomad that more likely has his own point of view, a darkened past, and is looking towards a future that he has no idea where he's going until he actually gets there. And he's very haunted by exactly who he is. He's a military guy, uh by by design, so like very silent, very a singular human being who pretty much just doesn't really take that much shit, but he's a deep character as far as how you based him.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a few things in there that I guess technically, if you've never read, could be a little spoilery. So I'll dance around a bit of them, mostly around how the nine families in the Republic Kingdom situate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're friendly, maybe they're not. But those nine families, to start there, one of the other, and this is one of the things again that really just came from living in the world as long as I have, and really challenging myself to tell its story, right? And I'll plant a flag and say Anatu exists because Anatu makes it much easier to tell a cohesive story of Amashik.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Anatu is there. He, as I mentioned to you, he wasn't there from the beginning. But one of the things that happened as I began just living and creating in this world is I knew I needed someone like him to really tell this story. So plant that flag and jump back to the nine families. One of the novel characters, the POV characters in the novel, is Lady Lena Balisk. So I tell the story on my Substack, basically how Queen Athenia Shadun became Queen Athenia Shadun. And basically, you took nine of the wealthiest houses in what at the time was the far east of the Dobashi Empire. And those families decided that they had a lot of resources. They had, fertile lands. They had a lot of, they had the most, what they had the wealthiest port in all of the Dabashi Empire. They had some things going for them. And they decided we want this to ourselves. And so when that happened, they're in the midst of the war before things got too dicey. So you talk about the ways that these families sometimes separate and come together in the Ennead. They decided they needed a leader. And so it came down to Malcolm Balisk and Athenia Shadun. And Athenia Shadun was chosen for reasons. Well, maybe I'll explore those, maybe I won't. That gets really political, right? And one of the things we've talked about before is that I'm not trying to make overt political statements. So why was Athenia Shadun chosen? I don't know. Maybe they paid somebody off and got an extra vote. Maybe she genuinely was the better leader. I don't know. I don't think that really matters at the end of the day. But she was chosen over Malcolm. But Malcolm was a respected leader, and they wanted to keep him on board with this new endeavor. So he was named the first justiciar of the Queen's Court. And so you think about that as the base for these nine families. There was always tension.
Yeah.
They came together for seditious reasons. So the ties were never really that thick. They were always purely political, always aspirational. And so things have changed in the waning 50 some odd years that since they started this war. And so that's how the tension that you pick up on, the tension that hopefully most readers pick up on between some of these factions within the Ennead, now that they're in the third generation of it,
Yeah.
they're all feeling the pressure. The rule of nine says that when the queen dies, who is now Queen Ilaria Shadun, Athenia's granddaughter, when she dies, they've all got to give up power according to the rules.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how you would feel about that, but I
Yeah.
know personally, I wouldn't want my family's legacy that we built over 50 years to just go away because you died. Like, well,
Yeah.
what about what we have? Like, what does that mean for me? And so that's where Lady Lena Ballas comes in, because she is the third generation leader of House Ballas. So her father, Malcolm, was the first justiciar. Excuse me, her grandfather, Malcolm, was the first. As her grandfather, Frederick, was the first justiciar. Her father is Malcolm. So I got those names confused. You can go back and and then that yourselves, listeners. But so Frederick, Malcolm, and Lena, and now Lena sits at the head of House Ballast and is a contemporary of Queen Ilaria. So I wanted to get another royal perspective to go along with Jalil's kind of everyman perspective. I'm keeping the third character in the novel a mystery, but let's just say that that character does a lot of what Anatu does, and
Right.
that is acts as the glue, acts as the character in this grand epic who can connect some dots and make your view go from this to this, right? Because I could have told the whole story on just Athea and the Republic Kingdom and the Ennead and its war, but I decided not to.
Right.
And so you needed characters dispersed throughout the story to make that make sense. And so that mystery character in the novel is going to do what Anatu has done for the comics.
Mm. So if I remember correctly, of course, from the 6 issues that were released on Kickstarter, when we got to, if I remember correctly, when we got to the fourth or fifth book, it seemed completely separate than anything that you did, and it told almost a completely different story. And in hindsight, of course, it resembled everything that we've read so far in Ennead and within those first 4 issues. But when we got here, it was like the world itself was a lot more spiritual. It was way more mythical, and the fantasy buildup that we had maybe had not seen just basically through a medieval timeline through Amashik all of a sudden came into this world that was built inside of these 6 issues that took us to a place that was like, this is very familiar to me, and I want to see more of it. And then by book 6, by the end of book 6, you're like, okay, it's all fitting. So what do you think of that?
So I played with that when I would and I'm sure we've discussed this because the wire pops into my head whenever this part of my storytelling comes up, whether it's my planning or what inspired me.
Yep.
You watch the first season of The Wire and you're watching one show. You watch the final season of The Wire and it's now layers deeper than you ever thought
Oh
it was
yeah.
going to be. And I feel like good fantasy does that to you all the time, right? You think it's one thing, and then all of a sudden you realize, whoa, I've been here this whole time. Okay, hold up. And so when you do that and you go back, the only hints that I really give about the ethereal aspects are in the way that people speak about particular deities, or the way that I open up book 2 with Anatu's dream is really the first time I give you like, what's this about? Now, again, knowing what you know about Anatu, he's a man who's lived his entire adult life and most of his childhood training for and in the military. So for him to have a fairly violent dream is not, you don't think twice about it, but there's a particular figure in this dream that we see again at the end of volume 1. And that's kind of one of the ways where I get you to kind of thumb back a few pages and realize like, oh, there was something there. And then when you go and you look again at book 3, you realize the way that those folks are speaking with that in mind now, maybe this isn't purely a religious conversation. Maybe this is the hints of that magic. And then, like you say, in books 4 and 5, I kind of take it a step further still when Niawi is introduced and
Mhm.
what she's capable of and what she's getting a sense of. And then in book 6, I kind of hit you over the head with it. I didn't think I had the HBO budget to wait 6 seasons or 6 volumes or however many volumes they give you of The Wire. I think it's 4 or 5. I don't remember now. But
It's
point
fine.
is, like, it's 4, right?
Is
5.
it the
All right,
four or
yeah.
five?
I
Uh,
don't remember now.
yeah. If,
We'll
if you
we'll
if you give
we'll
me
get torn to shreds
I'm
for
about to
not
say, if
knowing.
you give me the subtitles of The Wire, I remember. So the first season is built on the basically the hood. Second season is distribution.
Yep.
Third season is the school system. Fourth season is the media.
And don't we also get one
We get
with
one on the
the
government, so
the
it is
the
five.
politicians?
Yeah, we get one on the
Yeah,
politicians,
right.
so it's
It's
five.
5. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's five.
So that was kind of that. I mean, that just the way that they told that story is classic,
Right.
unmatched in my opinion. The meta way that they told that story, right? And so I was really inspired by that, and I wanted to build out a fantasy world in that way, where hopefully by the end of volume one, you now see even the way that Niawi comes back to finish off book seven. You realize like, okay, there are some things going on here, and there have to be reasons why this isn't a focal point in each one of these viewpoints, and why is that? And so that's kind of what we're going to figure out really by the end of volume two. You know, why, and also when you purchase and read the world book, um, why why is magic, why is spirituality dispersed the way that it is? And it has everything to do with the events of the separation. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that I do, and this is another hint, right? It's very, very understated, and you won't know this until you know more about the separation. But when you look at my map, the shattered gulf of Rithia sits right in the middle. And that is the event, there, excuse me, that is the place where the event known as the separation is said to have sprung forth from, right? So when you look at the way that the map, now that I've got the full map built out, if you look, you're looking at the map, so you're looking, center, to the right. So, you're going west to east.
Yeah.
The map is dispersed and kind of stratified in a particular way. But then when you look back in the other direction, while it is impacted, you see a much more solid set of land masses, right? So even that is speaking to some of the magic that is a very strong undercurrent in Amishi. And once folks learn the story, or at least the myth surrounding the separation, whether it's fact or fiction, who knows, they'll get an even better sense. So the hints have always been there, and I wanted to again be patient with the way that I told this story, and I always had the desire to reach beyond comics,
Yeah.
not because I didn't think comics were good enough for the story, but I don't want to stop. Like the comics, there's always been an end. I've always known, okay, this is where Natsu's going to end up. This is where Julius will end up. The Rule of Nine will be in this state, but I don't want to stop playing in the sandbox. I mean, I got my feet wet now, so I have to keep going. And so I wanted to build these other avenues for myself to continue telling stories in this world.
Yeah, so a lot of customers, of course, like myself, and a lot of readers got our chances to get volume one as of recently. I'm going to say as of last month. So now, when this Kickstarter came out, it was the volume one trade, and for a lot of comic readers, that might be a little bit foreign to them. Of course, this comes with the collector's box, and you have a lot more details as far as even the Eurosa that you're basically throwing in there. Now, what differentiates this volume one that I have here from the Kickstarter that is currently out right now?
What you have there is the full volume, 1 through 7. You have the full story, all the POV characters, and so you are all caught up.
Hmm.
What the special edition that I have on Kickstarter right now is, imagine that you're only getting a Natu story. Imagine that I decided, you know what, forget about calling this any of the Rule of Nine. Let's call it, fill in the blank.
Yeah,
Man with no name. I know that's
a
technical,
Natu's
but that's
quest,
kind of,
right?
exactly right. Like that's so imagine that that's the story that I decided to tell from the beginning. That's what you're getting. Plus, you're getting a sneak peek at all of Anatu's pages from book 10. So you get
Mm.
his story up to this point, and then for folks who are curious, folks who are invested in the character and don't necessarily want to wait until I decide to put volume two out later this year, you get to see what happens with Anatu, because again, he has a really powerful moment, for himself and for readers at the end of book 7, where he reveals some things are revealed to him, or maybe he's hallucinating, whatever it is.
Yep.
That that that's that that gives you another layer to his character. And so I wanted to share with folks who have been on this journey what he's going to do in response, and what he's going to do next, and how he may or may not change as a result. So one of the things that I put on the campaign page is, will Anatu find this life of peace, or will he found himself bound to a new sense of duty or justice? Because you brought it up, he he doesn't take shit. And the reason why he doesn't take shit is he has a very clear moral code, whether it is right, wrong, or indifferent. In our opinion, a Natu knows the difference between right and wrong according to a Natu. And
Hmm.
so he's not really going to be too successful um, at finding this life of peace unless he can completely isolate himself, which he's finding it harder to do here than he thought it would, than he thought he would. So you get that, and you get the kind of the tease for what comes next. Obviously, I threw some spot foil on there to make it, fancy and collectible. You tease these, so I'll pull one out. These
Uh-huh.
golden Eurosas, which I also share a bit about on the Substack
Yeah.
and on the campaign page. But for a Raukita, which is what Anatu is, it's the name that he of his position in the Kavani military. This is the pinnacle.
Yeah.
You being able to wield one of these is it says something about you. They don't just give these out. So I felt like it was only right that folks who've been here from the beginning, same thing. If you have one of these, it's going to say something about where you stand in the Ennead fandom. It means you were really here from the beginning. Whether you just get here now or you were here for the last 2 years, we're going to look back in a few years and say, oh, yeah, that was just the beginning. And so I wanted to celebrate that for myself, for longtime readers. I just wanted to plant a flag here because we're going to have this conversation 12 months from now, and Ennead as an IP is going to look completely different. Obviously, it's still going to be epic fantasy. Characters are going to be the same. I'm not going to switch it up and tell you a cyberpunk, but you're going to see completed comic volumes over here, plural. You're going to see completed novel, singular for now,
Right.
completed world history, volume one, right? Where I'm not going to tell you everything, but I'm going to tell you enough that it bridges some of these gaps and it fills in some of these blanks. And again, I do a lot of that. A lot of the stuff that I share on Substack about the magic system and the world history will be elaborated on in that world book. And so this for me is the moment where I was recently on another show, um, and I was talking about just this celebratory moment for me, and I was asked, when did you feel like you came into yourself as a writer? And I really feel like that is what's happening right now. And so this campaign, it's to reintroduce myself to the Kickstarter world because last year I only had one campaign, which
Yeah.
I launched 5 in the 18 months before that. So I'm kind of just itching to get back in the ring, so to
Hmm.
speak. But I also wanted to celebrate this moment and make this grand claim within my own readership. Like, if you have one of these, this is special. If you have one of these collectors boxes, the first one that we put out, this is special because I'm not going to stop building this IP. And so I'm trying as many ways as I can to leave breadcrumbs for the folks who've been here from the beginning so we can all, one day meet up at one of these conventions and say, oh shit, you got one of those? Let me see. Let me sign that for you. Oh, you got one of these? Yeah, definitely. I lost all mine. I sold all. I'm looking for those moments. And that's really what this campaign is about. It's a big celebration of what I have built, but I really do feel like we have built because this crowdfunding thing is just different. I feel like I know everybody who's read my book, and that is special.
That's what's happening. Now, as far as Substack goes, and of course, with it being a fairly new medium, what do fans hope to see that you don't give them when you're basically putting out your books that they can more so perceive themselves getting when they do subscribe to your Substack?
So, as a fan of fantasy, you know that there's always more. There's always,
Oh yeah.
a fantasy author will have a throwaway line about, a particular garment with a particular sigil that the characters haven't seen in 50 years, and oh well, there's a war, there's a hero, there's a villain. Like, give me that. I want to know what that is. Or somebody talks about a particular religious faction who does certain things, like has a very particular worship or a perspective on worship within a larger religion. Well, why? What are they doing? It sounds like a cult to me, like it's something going on. So I kind of remember when you were a little kid and you would pick up rocks and look for worms.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm kind of just I'm picking up a bunch of rocks, and like all the ones with worms on them, I'm leaving them upside down so you can come play in the mud and play with the worms, right? Like that's what I feel like I'm doing on Substack. So all the little things, all the little gems I leave, all the little things that make Ennead feel so lived in, there's a there. And so I'm basically on Substack just turning over those stones so you can play around a little bit while I build this world book. And then when you come back to the world book, now you really have everything that you need to really understand the world that you're in. I don't plan on giving any spoilers or anything that will ruin what is to come, but all of the things that, why is King Julius marching to war? Like
Mhm.
why are we following a king leading an army to war? And while it's not completely foreign, it isn't actually normal. Kings kind of tend to sit in the back, let people die for them, and they show up and steal the glory. Um, and that really doesn't. That's you got. I think about Game of Thrones all the time. You got King Robert who kind of broke that trend, but you know, after these early Targaryens that we're seeing in House of the Dragon, them Targaryens were in King's Landing.
Yeah.
They weren't doing what King Robert did, and it's one of the reasons why he won over the realm, right? So like King Julius is why is he walking away from his kingdom to start a war effectively? Who is that with? Where is that blood feud from? And one of the things that you'll find out really early on in the world book is that the conflicts that are brewing right now, both ethereal and in the physical realm, have been around for a long time. And so one of the things, and I'll share this with you, that I just the chapter that I'm not necessarily stuck in, but I'm letting marinate right now in the world book. There's an event called the Marring in the Mountains that I remember when I was building the map. I was building a particular mountain range, and I just wrote in the mountains, Marring in the Mountains. I didn't know what it was.
Hmm.
I knew that the way that that mountain range was set, that there it was definitely a really important part in the border between these two countries, and obviously like some shit went down there. There was
Yeah.
obviously some there had to be, right? Because this is the perfect place to sneak across the border. This is the perfect place to, rest an army, right? So an invading army. So I was like, there had to be something here. So I just wrote Marring in the Mountains. And so I'm currently writing the Marring in the Mountains. And what I'm doing there is I'm writing it from three different perspectives. And each one of these perspectives is a particular historical figure, not necessarily folks who are super important, but they're the primary sources, right? That my character, who's when I write the word book, I'm writing in character, and
Right.
so my character is using that source material to answer these questions. And so, in those particular viewpoints, you have what inevitably become some of the political and religious factions that we're dealing with today. So, like when you talk about the Substack, it's the beginnings of that. It's where I am teasing some of these bigger stories that I plan on telling. Again, the plan is within 2023. If not this time 2024, both that novel and world book will be out, and you'll get that. You'll get to go a little bit deeper. I think the comic, I always wanted to see a fantasy comic that took the epic fantasy genre seriously, and
Yeah.
really just wanted to tell a patient story. And so that's why I wrote The Rule of Nine. But again, I now that I've done that, I too want to share some of this stuff. And rather than bog down the comic with a bunch of info dumping and making it pretty much unreadable, I'm just going back and again, I'm filling in those gaps. So that's a lot of what's going on Substack. I do a lot of um, primary source type stuff. So, there's some handwritten letters in there, handwritten letters in
Yep.
there. There's some real political, here's how the law is written type stuff. I break down the branches of magic in two parts. And so all of these things, again, I'm just turning over the rocks. So you see there's some nice worms to play with and some mud. And you think about what it was like to just be a little kid
Yeah.
running around getting dirty for fun. Like that's what I'm doing in this lore, in this world over on Substack.
That's what's happening. Now, the genre in which you write in, is now in its, I'm going to say, its healthiest trend. There's plenty of IPs that are currently in epic fantasy. The return of Game of Thrones, of course, with House of Dragon, The Witcher, if we want to talk about Ring of Power, Vikings Valhalla, Vox Machina, which is an amazing cartoon on Amazon Prime. I didn't even think they would do that. And even unexpectedly, there's still Dungeons and Dragons, which is D&D, is going to come out as a movie very recently. Do you feel like it's like, as of right now, like 2023, like, do people now want to consume fantasy and epic fantasy in any which way or form as it is, because they feel as though it's a more healthy, organic type of genre rather than most of the ones that are pretty much put out there?
Yes, I think if I look, and this is again as just as someone who's, I remember watching, movies like Troy and the original Lord of the Rings, like
Hmm.
over and over and over and over again, because while it was out there, it wasn't as prevalent as it is right now. You could find it, but it wasn't. I liken the moment for fantasy right now, and epic fantasy in particular, to where superhero movies were, after the original, like Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Like people are realizing, like, oh, wait a minute, like not only is this interesting and this engaging storytelling, on the flip, people are realizing, oh, there's money to be made here. So you're getting a D and
Yeah.
D blockbuster summer film. Like I am beyond hyped for that. I don't care how corny, I don't care how bad. I will be in the theaters to watch that movie, because that is like, some might be mad at it and say it's selling out, whatever. Like the success of Critical Role getting, for those folks,
Yeah.
every Thursday night, like, and now even more nights, like they literally stream D&D on the internet and millions of people watch it.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I still tell people I'm going to play D&D. We play pretty much biweekly. It's a bunch of married and engaged gentlemen trying to play, so we have to listen to our wives and fiancés. But when we get to play, we do. And like I'll bring that up in real life, and people will either say like what, or they'll just start laughing like, "Oh, you do that?" And I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah, I do that." Like, what
Yeah.
do you mean? So I'm going to be there for D&D when it drops. I think that this is that moment where, if there if you could, and I don't know that you can, because superheroes have dominated pop culture for a longer time than 20 years, but like mainstream pop culture,
Mhm.
the last 20 years.
Yeah.
If fantasy is going to do it, it started with Game of Thrones. Like we're going to look back and be like, oh, that was when it really began, and we're looking, 2030, 2040
Pretty
is when
much.
this stuff is going to start to
And the
slow
thing
down.
is,
So I am.
no, no, no. And even so, it happened to be a TV show rather than a movie that did it.
Yeah. Which I think, I talk about wanting to be patient here. I think that also you teased Rings of Power, and I know that some people do or don't like it. I love all of it, right? Like you put elves and swords and shields and magic, and I'm gonna try real hard to like what's in front of me. Like I
Uh,
just genuinely am going to give it everything that I can, because to me it's still a rarity to get my preferred storytelling genre in all these different places. So I eat it up. But the episodic nature of Game of Thrones fit George R. R. Martin's storytelling perfectly. You could have never done a Song of Ice and Fire in a series of movies. I just don't think it. I think it would have been impossible.
right.
It would have been so watered down. It just wouldn't have worked. And so I think that because they were able to embrace epic fantasy in that slow, episodic way, uh, people realized how palatable it was. That's how all epic fantasy is written, by the way, as you know. Um,
Mhm.
good, it's slow. It takes its time. It builds up. You read the first 80 pages. I just finished the Broken Earth trilogy. Have you read that yet?
I
N.K.
have not.
Jemisin.
No.
It's fire. Um, I just finished it. I literally started the week before Christmas, and I finished earlier this week. And the way that she tells that story, I remember the first time I tried to read it. This was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I just couldn't. It was so dense. It was so new. The magic was completely original in my understanding of epic fantasy. You as a big fan of X-Men and things like that, you probably recognize this magic in a couple of those folks. But as far as pure epic fantasy goes, I've never really seen magic done like this. Um, and again, I could just be limited, but
Mhm.
man, it was so dense, it was so thick. But when I came back to it again, and I had that buffer, I had that time to let it marinate in my mind. I ate it up, and so I bring that up to say, like, a lot of epic fantasy starts that way. Like you start reading it and you feel like, you know what, I can't do this. It's too slow. They're meandering. And nothing is happening. But then you get a third of the way into an epic fantasy book, and it's a roller coaster ride the rest of the way. And so, Game of Thrones made that palatable, I think, to mainstream audiences who every Sunday sat down, and watched that more than they watched Sunday Night Football for a
Yeah.
long time, and that's huge,
Yeah.
as you know. Like if you're getting more views than the NFL, you're doing something right. And
It's
so
very true.
so I think they, that has me really excited. Some people might be intimidated by being in that space, especially as a completely independent creator. But for me, it's exciting because I know I was always looking for the next thing. I was always looking for the thing that I could be in on the ground floor of. And while I did read all of A Song of Ice and Fire before the series concluded, I didn't know what Game of Thrones was until HBO introduced it to me. And then when
Mhm.
they did, and I binged season one, I immediately went and I bought the I think the 4-pack at the time, because
Right.
I'm not even sure that Dance was out yet. And I was like, oh, I need this. And so I bought the 4-pack. And then I remember buying Dance.
Yeah, Dance of
I
Dragons.
just packed, I'm moving. Yeah. So like I remember buying that and like being like, okay, it's like season two, season three was out. I'm like, all right, I'm ready. And I felt like I was ahead of the curve. I really wasn't. I was still 20 years late. But that's what I'm talking about when I'm trying to
True.
create these special editions and make these, 3D collectibles. I know how important it is to be here early. And so I'm excited. I'm very confident. I'm very excited about where epic fantasy is going as a genre, and how many people are willing to take steps towards it now in a public fashion. Um, so I'm looking forward to the next few years.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Now, as far as like where you're looking to take this in the next coming months, because you're still working on volume two, what do we hope to expect from you as far as the beginning of volume two? Because now we've reached the climax and we've closed the door on an entire 6 issue series, and then we open another door to a more broader perspective of Amashik as it is.
And so, again, not to, I don't want to spoil anything, but I can speak in broad strokes. So, I originally envisioned the rule of nine is 4 volumes. I have since made that work for 3 volumes because of the addition of the novel series. So, there's a storyline or two um, that will eventually be the where I tease those characters Jaleel and Lena, and they will they'll be in the driver's seat of both of these, and the novel series will be the convergence of those two stories. That was going to take place in the comic, and that was going to require a 4th volume. Again, I'm greedy. I'm enjoying telling this story. If people are going to continue to support on Kickstarter and beyond, I might reintroduce a 4th. I might come up with a 5th or 6th. I don't know when I'll actually stop,
Mm-hmm.
if there's still a reason to keep going. But I do. So that being said, the end of volume one, I think you now know who these characters actually think they are. In the beginning of volume one, you don't really get a sense of who they are. You get a sense of who they present themselves as, especially with someone like Anatu,
Right.
right? But by the end of his journey, you realize like, oh wait, there's something else here. Like he's not okay. And he's like, if what I'm reading is legit, like he's really not okay. And he's on the other side of the world, no family, no friends, he doesn't know anybody. Like this might not end up too well for him.
Right.
Um, then you look at characters like Queen Ilaria, who very confident, speaking proudly, teaching about the rule of nine in the beginning of volume one, and then by the end of it, she's holding a letter in her hand, realizing that, wait a minute, like almost behind my back, like things, the plan that I was laying for my, hopeful, departure, that I
Mhm.
can't do that now. Like, what do you? And then, oh, there's this dude in my throne room right now talking crazy. Like, okay,
Yeah.
and who is he? Oh, all right. So now that bubbles up, and then you have characters like Niawi who you meet, and you kind of get right in the middle of volume one. I kind of sprinkle heavily, a lot of Niawi lore and just history. And then by the end of volume one, you realize, okay, so she's on her own quest and she's got her own,
Yeah.
her own thing going on. King Julius, very similar. You know what he's doing, and then by the end, he meets up with his old friend, and now you see they've got this real big, ambitious plan. And so, volume one gives you, okay, this is what they're actually doing, and then that character that you talked about at the end of book six kind of comes in, and they're like a tidal wave. So I can't wait for them to. You'll see them again in book nine.
I would
So you see them and you see them in full effect. And so that what you get now when you get into the beginning of volume two is kind of the um, I'm laying the next level. So I think I laid the foundation. Now that the first or second level is being built on top of that, and by the middle of volume two, you realize how high the stakes were for a lot of these characters, and you realize that when you came into the rule of nine, you weren't at the beginning of a story. You were already two-thirds of the way into some of these things. So a lot of plans have been in place, and I really just threw you in the middle of it. And
Mhm.
again, the reason why I chose to do that is I wanted the story to feel lived in. I wanted the engagement to be there with the material, but also I could have done this in so many different, like I just talked about the Marring in the Mountains. Had I decided to, I could have thrown you into the middle of the Marring in the Mountains and those three viewpoint characters who are now my primary source material as I tell you this history could
Right.
have been a nod to King Julius and Queen Ilaria. Like, so for me, it didn't matter where I dropped you. You were going to get this. You were going to get this experience. And so volume two is just, you take that a little bit further. Gideon and Lannis, who are some of my favorite characters, they're out in the Dabashi Empire. You realize what is going on over there is not just that you realize their attention can't just be focused on the Republic Kingdom. So yeah, the stakes just get a little bit higher in the early parts of volume two, and then by the end of it, like I said to you, and I might have said this backstage, but the landscape is going to look a little different.
That's what's happening. Look, I I've considered these books as well as this volume and going into volume two as a distinct pleasure because I've gotten to see it exactly from the beginning and how it's been built around. Sometimes I feel as though even if I see a viewpoint twice, I understand the direction in which it's supposed to go. So I appreciate that from you whole handedly. Now the Kickstarter got 2 weeks left. Basically, if anybody wanted to get their hands on your work, whether it be volume one, any of the singular issues, or better yet, when this Kickstarter does end and they wanted to get their hands on anything from the Ennead, how could they do so?
The best way to do that, Ennead underscore the rule of nine. You start typing that into your search browser, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You'll find me. You will likely see my face as my thumbnail, or you'll see a nod to, but you'll recognize it right away.
Mhm.
The best thing to do, I think, for folks who are hearing this and wanting to get on board, I have a brand new, fresh cover for Volume One. That cover right there behind you is the Liana Kangas cover.
Yep.
Liana is fantastic. They brought a whole new dimension to the story with that cover, and I think it fits the mystique that the story really always had that you get more of with the color version. So I love their work there. But I have my guy Ed Lively, who's the interior artist on book six and book nine. He came in and he gave us a fresh cover for the volume. So if you want to just get everything, you don't really want to do the whole let me follow this one character. This story sounds too big. I'm too intrigued. You can go for that right now on the Kickstarter. If you're a digital only kind of person, you have the $9 tier where you can get a month subscription to my Substack where you can read, I believe, books 1 through 3 right now. If you want to go all in, you can go for the 120 digital only. I will send you the volume one full PDF, the special edition full PDF. I'll get you a full year subscription to my Substack with that. And you'll also get first dibs on anything that comes out via my platform. But the best thing to do is hop into that Kickstarter. And even if you're not sure that you're really going to rock with Ennead long term,
Mhm.
again, I wish this was actually gold plated, but that budget, that goal would need to be a little bit higher. But the way I see this is going to be one of those things when I'm up on stage doing a panel, and I hop off stage and someone walks up to me with that, like that's going to be that's love. That I'm going to recognize that immediately. That's always going to be something that I know. I know exactly where I was. Shout out to Orly, who's a longtime reader who actually took this from the comic page and did the 3D print
Yeah, that was
version.
on the cover of issue 1, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is the one, right? This and so
Mhm.
she came in and she just on her own, like she started sending me images of like her playing around with it. She does, the VFX work, and I was like, hold on, let me pay you, finish that, like And so she's a great supporter, someone like yourself who's just been here with me, kind of behind the scenes the whole way, letting me know that this is a worthwhile endeavor. And so, like, not only do I share that with her now, that's that is something that if that ever comes up, if a fan ever gives me that, like that's immediate reason for me to go behind the table at the convention and give you whatever I have that's special because I know that you've been here, right? Like I'm signing books for you, I'm
Mhm.
giving you exclusive covers because again, that's love. Right now, this is still I'm a big J. Cole fan, so this is my dollar and a dream right here. So
Mhm.
this is, I remember listening to that when no one knew who Cole was, and he was, who is this dude? He's corny, not gang banging. I'm not listening to that. Meanwhile, we were all in college. We should all been listening to Cole. But the point is, like, you look at where he is now, and one of the things I love that he does at his shows is, he'll go back to one of his old songs. He'll turn the lights on. He'll ask you, "Do you want a mic? Do you want to rap with me?"
Mhm.
And you can literally go bar for bar with Cole, but not any of the new stuff. Like he goes way back, and like that. Those are special moments as creators. And again, I'm not expecting anybody to recite the rule of nine to me
Ah.
word for word. I wouldn't be able to do it with you. But the point is, like that's where I'm at, and that's what this Kickstarter is. So even if you're on the fence and you're into epic fantasy, I highly recommend checking out either the collector's box or the Eurosa bundle where you can get one of these. Because if you mess around and like it, this is this is a golden ticket, and wherever I end up, I'm gonna recognize you.
So, Jeffrey, continue blesses, man. I appreciate you doing this with me. This is always a pleasure talking with you about how defined and detailed that this book and this storyline has always been. So I appreciate that from you.
Appreciate you. I'll be back.
Oh yeah, yeah, we will. All right. So from Jeffrey L. Johnson for Ennead the Rule of Nine, James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, we are out.